Oh, that's rich.
I meant what I said. We can start on the right foot.
Ladies, I'll pass. But thanks for the offer.
Did she just turn away? Why is that hand still hanging there? Everyone saw it, so why is no one saying a word? The summit corridor was full of billion-dollar smiles, but one quiet refusal froze the air. A white billionaire sidestepped a black CEO's outstretched hand. And the cameras captured a humiliation that felt bigger than a single moment. By morning, whispers became sirens, and a $2.4 billion empire began to collapse in public. This is the story of the billionaire who refused to shake a black CEO's hand, then watched her world disappear. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Atlanta's skyline reflected in Lumengrid's windows. And inside them, Annika Brooks lived a life built on quiet discipline. She was the kind of black woman people still called self-made, as if success needed a footnote. At 42, Annika was CEO of Lumengrid, clean energy software company she'd started 12 years earlier in a rented basement office with 2 laptops and a stubborn idea. Her mission was simple and radical. Energy should be reliable for everyone. She designed microgrids that kept hospitals, schools, vulnerable neighborhoods powered through storms and heat waves. That focus turned her startup into a global competitor. Her days ran on a rhythm. She rose before dawn, trained in a nearly empty gym, whispered a short prayer, and studied overnight reports while the city slept. By night, she answered engineers in Nairobi or Sao Paulo, then checked on her teenage daughter before going to sleep. She didn't chase attention. She chased proof. This week, Lumengrid was heading to the Meridian Summit, where governments and investors signed deals that shaped the next decade of energy. Annika had attended before, but this year was different. She would unveil a partnership with a European infrastructure fund that could push Lumengrid past a $10 billion valuation. Her team felt the weight of it. Many had never seen someone who looked like them lead a stage like this. To them, Annika's presence wasn't symbolism. It was permission to imagine more. Across town, another woman prepared for the same summit. Celeste Whitmore, a white billionaire and founder of Whitmore Capital, was famous for chilly composure and a gift for bending markets. At 50, she presided over a $2.4 billion empire of private equity and real estate, built through fast bets and a network that rarely had to explain itself. Rooms turned when she entered, and she expected them to. Celeste had long dismissed Lumengrid as niche, hinting that founders like Annika couldn't scale into real infrastructure power. She'd never met Annika, but she knew her name and disliked what it represented, a future she didn't control. The summit would place them under the same cameras inside an unwritten hierarchy. Everyone expected polished smiles and ceremonial handshakes. Yet a deeper tension had been gathering for years, waiting for one spark. The Meridian Summit opened in glittering routine flashbulbs, velvet ropes, panels packed with talk of innovation and equity. Annika moved through it with practiced calm. She wore a deep blue suit and carried herself as if she knew her work could stand on its own. Investors congratulated her on Lumengrid's hurricane response rollout. Ministers asked for photos. She smiled, thanked them, and kept her focus on the keynote hall where leaders would greet one another before stage time. Celeste arrived late. With assistants in tow, the hallway subtly bent around her. People straightened, made space, and laughed a touch too hard at her dry comments. She was speaking after Annika on a panel about capital, and her presence felt like a cold front. Executives lined up for the ceremonial greeting. When Celeste reached Annika, the air shifted. Annika stepped forward first, hand extended in a simple sign of respect. Celeste glanced at it, then lifted her eyes past it. She offered a thin smile, angled away, and shook the man beside Annika instead. Annika's hand hung in the air for a beat too long. Cameras caught it. So did everyone watching. The moment wasn't loud, but it said everything. You may be here, but not as an equal. Annika lowered her arm without a flicker of anger. She had learned that visible rage could be weaponized against her. Still, the sting was sharp, and it reached beyond her. Lumen Grid employees were streaming the feed as they saw their CEO dismissed in real time, on stage. Annika delivered her keynote, Anyway Climate Resilience. Grid Democracy. Communities that suffer when energy becomes privilege. Her data was clean, her voice steady. The audience applauded. Backstage, a reporter posted the handshake clip with a single question. What was that? Other outlets copied it. Headlines used polite words, snub, awkward, misunderstanding, but comments were blunt about race and power. Celeste acted as if nothing had happened. Later, she praised meritocracy, insisting that good ideas rise regardless of identity. During Q&A, a journalist asked if the sector still carried implicit bias in leadership. Celeste laughed lightly and said focusing on race was a distraction from performance. In a room that had watched her refusal, the answer sounded hollow that night. In a hotel lounge, a Whitmore Capital analyst slipped. He joked that Lumen Grid was overvalued on diversity hype, and that Celeste had kept standards clear. A staffer recorded it. By midnight, the audio was online, tying the snub to a culture. Employees and former partners began speaking up. Lumen Grid staff shared old encounters, meetings where they were talked over, emails addressed to Annika's male deputy, memos praising her but questioning her background. Founder Celeste had financed posted warnings about predatory contracts and selective respect. What began as one silent refusal became a chain of testimony. Annika stayed publicly quiet. While social media surged, her teams collected timelines and witnesses. Before dawn, a whistleblower inside Whitmore Capital sent journalists internal emails and valuation notes, suggesting Celeste had steered deals away from minority-led firms and pressured Tagered boards to replace black executives after acquisitions. The clip was the spark. The leak was the fuel. By sunrise, the industry faced a fire it could no longer call smoke. At 6:12 a.m., headlines detonated. Outlets ran side-by-side images of Celeste turning from Annika's hand and screenshots from whistleblower files. The story shifted from etiquette to pattern. Investigators found Whitmore Capital's lending arms rejecting minority developers at far higher rates. At the same time, internal notes praised projects only after new leadership arrived. Regulators announced urgent reviews. A congressional committee requested documents. The public finally had proof of what many had felt. Celeste woke to a phone vibrating nonstop. Her communications chief reported defections, clients freezing funds, banks demanding answers. A sovereign wealth partner halted a $600 million pipeline, citing values misalignment. Within hours, Whitmore's primary lender issued a margin call on loans secured against Celeste's holdings. Her liquidity once her armor looked thin. She drove to headquarters expecting control. Instead, she found protesters and cameras. Corporate partners sent termination notices unless leadership changed. Her board, made of allies she had chosen, met without her and voted to suspend her pending investigation. By late morning, markets moved. Firms she controlled wobbled as institutions dumped exposure. News tickers tallied the losses. Hundreds of millions. Then over $1 billion. Her $2.4 billion empire was unraveling in a single day. The refusal to shake a hand had exposed the machine behind it. Then the machine was collapsing under its own weight. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Annika watched the chaos from a quiet conference room, not with joy, but with resolve. She had never wanted revenge. She had wished for fairness. Lumen Grid released a short statement supporting transparency and reaffirming its mission to deliver resilient, communities-centered power. She refused to gloat because humiliation traded back is still humiliation on the weeks that followed. Whitmore Capital's assets were placed under independent oversight. Several companies Celeste had absorbed gained paths to reclaim equity. Partner networks rewrote compliance rules on contracting and executive treatment. More important than policy, people began naming the invisible costs of bias, the deals never offered. The talent never hired, the hands never shaken. The Meridian Summit issued a formal apology to Annika and introduced penalties for discriminatory conduct for Lumengrid. The impact was immediate and lasting. The European partnership moved forward, strengthened by public support. Applications poured in from young engineers who said they finally saw a future in clean energy leadership. Annika launched a seed fund for underrepresented founders in climate tech, arguing that power must be shared before it hardens into another gate. This story doesn't claim every racist act is punished so swiftly. Often prejudice hides behind polished manners and survives for decades. But it shows how a minor public slight can crack open the architecture behind it. When evidence meets a moment, the world is ready to see that even the richest walls can fall. And silence from witnesses is injustice learns to breathe. In your world, whose hand is still being ignored, Dan, what would it take for all of us to notice?